If you were to look at a flight tracking map of the Middle East right now, you'd see something that looks like a calm, orderly sky. Commercial airliners are flying their routes, cargo planes are moving goods, and everything seems normal. But that's the illusion. Just above those airliners, in the silent, thin air of the upper atmosphere, the most dangerous game of chicken in the history of the 21st century is being played out. As of January 2026, the United States has launched a massive armada toward the borders of Iran. This isn't just a response to a single event. It is the culmination of a decade of tension, a failed nuclear deal, and a new administration in Washington that has decided to draw a line in the sand, not with words, but with the roar of fifth-generation engines. But this time, it's different. This isn't just about the technology of the jets or the range of the missiles. This is about a strategy of chaos, a geopolitical gamble where the stakes are nothing less than the global economy and the future of the Middle East. Welcome to the heart of the crisis. This is the shocking reason why US fighter jets are surging into the Middle East amid Iran's high alert. To understand why this surge is happening now, we have to look at the intelligence trigger of January 2026. While the public sees the jets, the real war began weeks ago in the windowless rooms of the CIA and the NSA. In early January, a series of classified intelligence reports began to circulate in Washington. They didn't just point to increased tension, they pointed to a specific, coordinated plan by Tehran and its regional proxies to conduct a surgical decapitation of the global energy supply. The intelligence suggested that Iran, frustrated by a new wave of maximum pressure sanctions, was preparing to move beyond the usual harassment of tankers. They were planning a synchronized strike on the critical oil infrastructure of Saudi Arabia and the UAE, not with drones, but with a massive multi-vector assault designed to drive oil prices to $200 a barrel overnight. The shocking reality of the surge is that it is a preemptive shield. The F-22s and F-35s aren't just there to protect Israel or the US bases. They are there to act as a digital umbrella over the world's gas stations. If Iran pulls the trigger, the US is prepared to turn the Iranian sky into a no-fly zone within minutes. The vulnerability is not the strength of the alliance. It's the fact that the global economy is one lucky Iranian strike away from a total collapse. And then there is the proxy paradox. For years, the US has tried to fight Iran by fighting its proxies, the Houthis in Yemen, Hezbollah in Lebanon, and militias in Iraq. But in 2026, the proxies have become the early warning system for Tehran. As the US jets surge into the region, Iran's proxies have gone on their own high alert. In Lebanon, Hezbollah has moved its long-range missiles into launch positions. In Yemen, the Houthis have activated their coastal radars. This creates a shocking tactical nightmare for the US Air Force. To hit a target in Iran, a pilot has to fly through a gauntlet of proxies. Every mile of the flight is monitored by a different group, each with their own piece of the puzzle. The US surge isn't just facing the Iranian Air Force. It is facing a decentralized shield that stretches from the Mediterranean to the Indian Ocean. The vulnerability is not the pilot's radar. It's the fact that the enemy is everywhere and nowhere at the same time. Open loop, but the proxies are only the distraction. The real shocking part of the surge is the diplomatic execution happening behind the scenes. Washington has issued an ultimatum to Tehran: negotiate or face the armada. But the shocking twist is that the US isn't just talking to Iran, they are talking to Beijing. China is the largest buyer of Iranian oil. In January 2026, the US reportedly told China that if a conflict breaks out, the US will not guarantee the safety of any tanker leaving an Iranian port, regardless of the flag it flies. This is a move to turn Iran's biggest customer into its biggest pressure point. The surge of fighter jets is the physical enforcement of this diplomatic threat. The F-35s are there to show China that the US is serious about closing the Iranian spigot if Tehran doesn't capitulate. The vulnerability is not the lack of diplomacy, it's the fact that the US is using the risk of a global war as a bargaining chip. This brings us to the human element and the pilot's perspective. We often talk about these jets as assets or platforms, but inside every F-22 Raptor is a human being. In January 2026, the pilots flying these missions are under a level of stress that is almost impossible to describe. They are flying combat air patrols, CAP, that last for 10 or 12 hours at a time, supported by a constant stream of tankers. They are operating in a high-alert environment where every Iranian radar lock is a potential act of war. The shocking reality of 2026 is that these pilots are being told to embrace the chaos. They are flying with rules of engagement that are intentionally vague, designed to keep the Iranians guessing. If an Iranian jet approaches, does the pilot fire, or do they wait? The decision that could start World War III is being made by a 28-year-old captain in a cockpit over the Persian Gulf. The vulnerability is not the machine's AI. It's the fact that the ultimate safety switch is a human brain pushed to its absolute limit. Now let's talk about the economic siege and the 5-month high. As the jets surge, the markets have responded with terror. In late January 2026, oil prices surged to a 5-month high, settling at a level that has sent shockwaves through the global supply chain. The shocking truth is that Iran is winning the economic war without firing a single shot. By simply going on high alert and forcing the US to surge its forces, Iran has created a level of volatility that is draining the American treasury. The US is spending millions of dollars per day to maintain this armada in the region. Every hour an F-35 is in the air costs $30,000. Every tanker mission costs hundreds of thousands. Iran, meanwhile, is just sitting behind its high alert shield. The vulnerability is not the lack of fuel, it's the fact that the cost of deterrence is becoming higher than the cost of a war. This brings us to the Monroe Doctrine of the Middle East. In 2026, the US is operating under a new unwritten rule: no external power in the Gulf. This is directed squarely at Russia and China. The surge of fighter jets is a signal that the US will not allow a multipolar Middle East. But the shocking reality is that the Middle East of 2026 is not the Middle East of 1991. Iran has built a sovereign defense that is designed to survive an American surge. They have moved their critical industries underground. They have built a digital wall that is harder to penetrate than any physical fortress. The US is trying to use a 20th century strategy, overwhelming force, against a 21st century enemy, asymmetric resilience. The vulnerability is not the number of jets. It's the fact that the US is fighting a ghost of the past while the enemy is living in the future. Now consider the Israeli wildcard. While the US is surging its forces, Israel is watching with a different set of priorities. In January 2026, there are reports that Israel may move first to trigger a conflict that forces the US to finish the job. The shocking dynamic is that the US surge might actually be deterring its own ally. Washington is worried that if they don't show enough strength, Israel will take matters into its own hands. The F-22s are there to tell Israel, "We have this under control." The vulnerability is not the lack of coordination. It's the fact that the shield is being pulled in two different directions by two different allies. Let's look deeper into the strategy of chaos. The current US administration has been accused of being unpredictable, but in 2026, this unpredictability is a weaponized tool. By surging jets and then offering a deal, the US is trying to create a cognitive overload in Tehran. But the shocking risk is that chaos is a two-way street. If Iran feels like the US is truly irrational, they might decide that a suicidal first strike is their only option. The strategy of chaos only works if the other side remains calm. The vulnerability is not the lack of a plan. It's the fact that the plan depends on the enemy being more rational than the person who created it. And then there is the technological hubris of the surge. The US is betting everything on the idea that an F-35 can penetrate any defense. But in January 2026, there are disturbing reports of AI-driven radar being tested by Iran. This isn't just about seeing the jet. It's about using machine learning to predict where the jet will be based on the tiny fleeting signals it leaves in the atmosphere. The shocking truth is that the stealth advantage is a ticking clock. The surge might actually be training the enemy. The vulnerability is not the jet's software. It's the fact that the enemy is a learning organism that never sleeps. Finally, we have to talk about the endgame of the Armada. A surge of this magnitude cannot be maintained forever. The shocking conclusion of January 2026 is that the US has created a self-fulfilling prophecy. By surging so much force, they have made it impossible for Iran to back down without looking weak. The Middle East is now a geopolitical pressure cooker. The jets in the sky are the steam, and the high alert on the ground is the fire. The US is building the Golden Dome because they know that even if they win the air war, the missiles will still come. So why is the surge so shocking? Because it shows that the world order is being held together by a thread. The surge of F-22s and F-35s is not just a military operation. It is a scream of dominance in a world that is no longer listening. The next time you see a headline about fighter jets in the Middle East, don't just look at the wings, look at the oil prices, look at the strategy of chaos, because in the end, the surge is not about a single border. It is about the survival of an era. The era of stability through strength is over. The era of the high alert standoff has begun. And in this new world, the surge is just one shocking moment away from becoming a global catastrophe. The United States is surging its jets because they are terrified of the alternative. They are betting everything on chaos because order is no longer an option. The high alert in Tehran is the signal that the world is now playing for keeps.